This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Egypt to host meeting looking to revive peace talks between Palestine and Israel. Militiamen kill 6 rangers in the DRC's Virunga National Park. And world coronavirus cases have surpassed 90 million. Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also coming up on the program. In business, Nigeria maintains its lead as the largest economy in Africa. And in your sports, Brad Binder's historic Grand Prix win last year inspires young South Africans to take up the sport. Egypt is set to host a meeting looking to revive peace talks between Palestine and Israel. Foreign ministers from France, Egypt, Germany and Jordan will participate in that meeting. Germany's foreign ministry said Foreign Minister Heiko Maas would head to Egypt for the talks. This quartet committee was created on the sidelines of the 2020 Munich Security Conference. Peace negotiations between both countries have been suspended since April of 2014. Well, let's cross over to Yasser Hakim. He's joining me on the line from Cairo. Yasser, what's the latest from Cairo on this developing story?
Well, at the moment, the four ministers foreign ministers are meeting at the presidential palace, where Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is in talks with the quartet. The Jordanian foreign minister has been the first to arrive to Cairo last night and already had talks with the Egyptian foreign minister Sameh Shoukry. And these talks, according to the Egyptian foreign ministry spokesman, have focused on Egypt's latest contacts with the Palestinians and Israelis to try to find some kind of a medium where they could agree on some points to sit and talk for direct negotiations. They're also trying to work on finding means to push the peace process forward. Cairo says the peaceful solution should be based on a two-state solution with an independent Palestinian state on the borders of June 1967 with East Jerusalem as its capital. This is the basis of the talks at the moment that will be put on the table during the quartet meetings and also during the Palestinian-Israeli direct talks if the quartet succeeds in bringing the two sides together. The German embassy issued a statement ahead of the meeting saying that the talks will focus on bringing the two sides together, that's Palestine and Israel, and also to make use of the dynamics of the latest normalization deals signed between Israel and 4 Arab nations. So the climate in the region now is more ready to accept some kind of an agreement and peace process to go forward between the Israelis and Palestinians after the normalization deals between Israel and several Arab countries and the news that more Arab countries will join the normalization talks. Therefore, what we are waiting for now is the talks to begin. They have not begun yet, the quartet meetings. They will begin after the meeting with the Egyptian president. The 4 foreign ministers will sit together and try to forge out some kind of action plan to bring together the Palestinians and Israelis. And it's a tough situation, obviously, because, like you said, the talks have been suspended since 2014. We're talking about 7 years. So to bring them back together in direct negotiations is a mission for the quartet to try to succeed in the near future.
Yasser Hakim on the line there from Cairo. Thank you. Indonesian divers are searching for the black boxes from the passenger jet that crashed into the sea on Saturday. More than 60 people are feared dead. Silkina Ahluwalia has more from Jakarta.
Rescue officials have been working overnight from Saturday, and they are now entering their third day. Lots of hope for this Monday afternoon. The investigation team and police officials are analyzing the human remains and flight debris that they have found so far. Officials say they have found the exact location of both the black boxes. They were getting pings and signals from that specific area. They have deployed more boats and manpower to speed up this search. And once the black boxes are found, we can get more clarity on why this tragedy happened. Another top priority for Monday is the victim identification process. We are just outside of the crisis center here in Jakarta's International Airport, where family members are constantly waiting for updates. Unfortunately, at this point, we're not allowed to speak to any of them yet, but we know that police officials have received 40 DNA samples from the family members as of Monday morning. As you can imagine, taking care of the families is really important right now. President Joko Widodo also said the same thing. He said family members should be the top priority at this point, and he's working to speed up this investigation process so the family can get some closure. That's really what they're looking for right now. They're hoping to give their loved ones proper send-off, and that might take some time, but they are holding out to that hope.
Silkina Ahluwalia from Jakarta. 3 people have been killed and 4 others wounded in a series of shootings in Chicago. Police say the suspect seemed to randomly target victims, including a 15-year-old girl and a 30-year-old graduate student originally from China at the University of Chicago. He was shot in the head while sitting in his car in a parking garage. The suspect was identified as 32-year-old Jason Nightingale. He died in a gunfight with police. Investigators are still trying to determine a motive for the attack. Still in the U.S., House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she's ready to start impeachment proceedings against Donald Trump for the second time in his presidency, unless he's removed from office. Our correspondent Jagruti Dave has the latest from Washington.
Well, let's look at the logistics. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is going to first call a resolution. House Democrats are going to call for a resolution on the 25th Amendment, asking Vice President Mike Pence to invoke it and thereby taking control of the country in the interim period until Joe Biden takes the helm of the country on January the 20th. In order for that to happen, a majority of the cabinet would require consensus as well as a majority vote in Congress. She's also going to bring forward impeachment proceedings in the House, and Representative James Clyburn, the House Majority Whip, has said in an interview that the vote on this could take place as early as Tuesday or the middle of next week. He has also, however, said that the articles of impeachment might be withheld until after Joe Biden's presidency has had its 100 days, because there are concerns that it could overshadow and impede his agenda, Joe Biden's agenda, as he takes office. There's investigations happening in police departments all across the country to look into whether any of their own members were involved in the riots. Not only police departments, you've got firefighters that are also under investigation as well. You've got reports that a police officer and at least one police chief could be fired or face disciplinary consequences over allegations of their involvement or even having been in attendance at the protests.
Here's a grim milestone from the coronavirus pandemic. Johns Hopkins University reports that the number of COVID-19 cases around the world have surpassed 90 million. Nearly 2 million have died. The United States remains the worst-hit country with 22 million infections and 370,000 deaths. India ranks second with half the number of cases and deaths as the United States. That's followed by Brazil. It's taken just 15 days for the global caseload to jump by 10 million. While the Seychelles has become the first African nation to begin using China's Sinopharm vaccine, President Wavel Ramkalawan was the first to get the jab on Sunday during a live televised event. The country's health minister said last week the United Arab Emirates had donated 50,000 doses of the vaccine. The Seychelles says it hopes to inoculate well over half of its population in under 3 months. The island nation was quick to impose lockdown measures in April. It has reported just over 500 cases with only 1 fatality. Algeria's President Abdelmadjid Tebboune has been flown back to Germany for treatment for COVID-19 complications. That is 2 weeks after his return from the European country where he had been receiving COVID-19 treatment. The office of the president says that he suffers foot complications which will need surgery, though not an emergency. The 75-year-old head of state had notified the citizenry on the treatment during a state televised address in December. Well, millions of South Africans will have their COVID-19 vaccinations subsidized by some leading medical aid schemes in the country. The schemes have backed a national effort to seek less costly COVID-19 vaccines from international suppliers. This is part of a government public-private partnership aimed at curbing the spread of COVID-19. CGTN's Yolisan Jamela has more details.
South Africa is racing to acquire vaccines to immunize 67% of the population. According to the Health Ministry, the intention is to create a herd immunity against the coronavirus at least by the end of the year. So far, the country has procured 1 million doses of a COVID-19 vaccine, a far cry from the ultimate goal. So, some leading medical aid schemes have now stepped in. Discovery Health is one of them. The private health scheme will subsidize about 30% of the population for coronavirus vaccination once the jabs become available.
The medical scheme funding by law is obliged to fund for vaccinations for medical scheme members. So that's somewhere around 7.1 million medical scheme members will then receive funding for vaccination as part of that mechanism. In addition to that, there's a cross-subsidization mechanism that means that medical schemes will match fund for an additional 7.1 million people in the broader public sector. So not only will medical schemes fund for 7.1 million medical scheme beneficiaries, but will also fund for 7.1 million public sector beneficiaries.
For each person who belongs to a medical aid scheme who is immunized, an uninsured person will also be covered. The medical aid schemes have committed to purchasing the vaccines for more than their standard price.
From a Discovery Health perspective and a broader medical scheme environment perspective, I think we recognize the need for us to act in social solidarity to help get everyone in South Africa vaccinated, or at least get everyone access to vaccines in South Africa. So we've collaborating with government, we're pooling resources and funding and pooling capabilities so that we've got the best shot at accelerating the procurement of vaccine for all South Africans.
At least one public health expert says with all this funding, the rollout strategy of the vaccines will be critical.
Medical schemes will cover a large portion of the costs. They've even offered to pay for the non-medical scheme members in South Africa. So people not covered by insurance will be donated funds in order to get access. So I think that the main issue really is what is the rollout strategy and how is that to be organized. But right now, it's fine making the funds available, but you've got to get access to doses. You've got to get agreements in place.
Despite the medical aid scheme's efforts, a section of the population will still need to be financially covered in terms of access to the vaccine. Government has established a vaccine acquisition task team to deal with the problem. The mandate of the task team is to assist the country in pulling together financial resources to fill the gap. Yolisan Jamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, the United Kingdom is opening more vaccination centers on Monday. It has described as the country's largest ever vaccination program. Much of the country is in full lockdown, with people told to only go out for essential reasons. The government warns that any flexing of the rules could prove fatal. And as Andrew Wilson reports, some hospitals are at a tipping point.
As the number of deaths slips past 80,000, the National Health Service is feeling the pressure like never before. critical care staff are working around the clock, but many are going off sick and the rest are simply exhausted, dedicated but stressed.
At the moment, our intensive care unit is way over capacity. The staffing is very, very sketchy. We're doing our best, but it is, it's essential that people abide by the rules so that we can provide the care to the community.
And I know that sounds very soppy and things like that, but it literally is the humanitarian effort that has gone into this pandemic that has kept people going.
Most of the UK is in full lockdown, including London, where the mayor has declared a major incident, warning hospitals were at risk of being overwhelmed. Ambulances are answering up to 9,000 calls a day, and the government is in the firing line again.
The vast majority of the British public have complied with the rules. They've done that for 9 months. But they need clarity about exactly what is asked of them, because we've had all this mixed messaging, Stay at home, don't stay at home, eat out, don't eat out.
At the same time, vaccination centres are springing up across the country, and ministers are confident that the programme is finding its momentum.
The good news is that we're getting to over 200,000 people a day is significant progress. And amongst those who we need to reach most, amongst the over 80s, we've now vaccinated around a third of all of the over 80s.
And on Saturday, the Queen and Duke of Edinburgh received their jabs, boosting the profile and progress of the campaign. And alongside the vaccination centres, the government will start mass testing for people without symptoms, giving workers a chance at least to know if they are a risk to others or not. Andrew Wilson, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. Militiamen killed 6 rangers in the DRC's Virunga National Park.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Talks over Ethiopia's Grand Renaissance Dam have reached a new impasse. Egypt, Sudan and Ethiopia have taken part in several talks on the dam. The parties have failed to agree on a raft of issues, including proposals by the African Union. Key among them are modalities for the filling of the dam. Well, let's get more on these latest developments. I'm now joined by Girum Chara. He's in Addis Ababa for us. Patrick Oyet is in Juba, South Sudan. And Adel Mahroui is joining us from Cairo. Girum, first to you, the talks have reached an impasse. Let's start with what's going on now. What is Ethiopia's position on the matter?
Beatrice, first of all, as you've said, for the almost second time in 2 weeks, the tripartite meeting between Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam failed to reach some sort of agreement on the future of the talks itself. But when it comes to Ethiopia's position, Ethiopia believes that most of the issues with regards to the guidelines and rules of the first filling of the dam, and also the future administration, the annual administration of the Ethiopian Grand Renaissance Dam are agreed on. But the most important and the contentious issue here is the future usage of the Nile basin itself. Ethiopia believes that the finishing of the Grand Renaissance Dam is going to guarantee a better future for its citizens, supplying electricity at least for 70% of its population, exporting power to the rest of the continent, and assisting the continental development itself. But according to the push from the two countries, Ethiopian authorities tell you that any agreement, a binding agreement that is, which is going to restrict Ethiopia from the usage of the Nile water for future dam construction or other development activities is absolutely unacceptable. So Ethiopia believes that in the future, we have to also understand each other, that we have to use this water fairly. And without that, there will not be any agreement that is going to be signed between the three countries. So the stand remains firm, and it has been the same for a long time, Beatrice.
Adel, the future usage of the Nile water remains a sticking point. How is the Egyptian government, though, reacting to the latest developments, the turn of events?
Egypt has released a statement about the latest round of talks, which is actually not about the details of the negotiations in the dam as a project or the future even uses of the Nile water. The current negotiations were basically on how to negotiate in first place. So there has been a round of talks for the past few weeks as the three countries are trying to set regulations and deadlines for them and put on a platform that they can agree on so that they can start talking once again on the details of the issues that some of which Giram has mentioned. To Egypt, the entire issue now is, and the main reason for the deadlock reached this week, according to a statement from the Egyptian Foreign Ministry, is Sudan. It's basically what Sudan has announced, or the insistence of Sudan to resort to using or to give the room for the experts from the African Union to reach solutions over the matters in dispute, instead of depending on the three countries to what Sudan describes as a loophole or going on. And this is what Egypt has had some reservations on. Egypt wants to be involved in the answers or the solutions provided in these talks. Egypt also, beside that, wants to guarantee that written guarantees from Ethiopia specifically, that nothing will interfere with its share of the water, the 55.5 billion cubic meters of water, and that whatever comes in the future, nothing should affect that. This is something that to Egypt is crucial, because as we all know, the Nile water share is the main source of fresh water to Egypt, and it's much less than what the country needs.
So, Patrick, let's hear from you on Sudan's position here and its insistence to give room to experts. What is Sudan saying?
Yeah, Beatrice, the Sudan also, of course, has very serious concerns when it comes to the issues of water of the Nile, because Sudan also, most part of it is desert, and it depends on the Nile water to feed the industries and also, of course, for domestic consumption, for irrigation. So Sudan is saying that it is hopeful that an agreement will be reached in the near future, even though these latest or the talks that began on Sunday did not succeed, did not go far. It is said it had hoped that the talks would actually end in this January. It is said that so many areas have been agreed on before, so there are very few areas, about 3 areas, that is on regulating how the water should be filled in the dam, and also during dry season what quantity should be filled, and during wet season what quantity should be filled, and if there is supposed to be a treaty or not, to regulate how or to provide guideline on how the water should be used even in the future. So it says that it is hoping that talks will resume at any time so that the issues are resolved. It recognizes the fact that the dam is already in existence, so what is needed is only to find a way of reaching a resolution or a solution on how to regulate how the dam would be used. Beatrice.
Patrick Oyet joining us there from Juba in South Sudan, Adel Mahrouri in Cairo, and Girum Chala in Ethiopia. To you all, thank you. Let's now head to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where militiamen have killed 6 rangers in the Virunga National Park. The attack took place on Sunday. An official at the park says the identity of the assailants is still not known. Oliver Muketia, a spokesperson at the park, added that previous attacks have been conducted by assailants seeking to control natural resources in the DRC. So far, 200 rangers have been murdered there. In April of last year, an attack by the Mai Mai militia group left 13 rangers dead. Virunga National Park is located in Goma in the east of the DRC. It hosts the endangered mountain gorillas and is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. While CGTN's Chris Ochamringa is in Kinshasa with more on that story. Chris, what more can you tell us about this attack?
Well, the attack happened on Sunday in an area known as Nyami Twitwi in the middle of Virunga National Park. A group of armed assailants attacked the area and killed 6 rangers and injured several others. Now, the Congolese Institute for the Conservation of Nature issued a statement condemning the attack. They said their rangers were taken by surprise and had no way of defending themselves. They're saying one of them, who was in critical condition, was taken to a hospital in Goma, and he received treatment and is now out of danger. That park is, a home to over half the global population of mountain gorillas, and there are very many tourists who keep coming to Africa to see them, but they end up going to Rwanda and neighboring Uganda because of the insecurity in the DRC. So the DRC is losing a lot of revenue from tourism because of the constant attacks in that area.
So, Chris, we do understand this is not the first time that militiamen have attacked rangers at the park. What could be the reason for this?
Well, the motive of the attack is still not known. But according to a security official I talked to, he said some of these militia groups in eastern DRC work with poachers because Virunga National Park has very many wild animals like elephants, pangolins that are on very high demand, especially in Asia. So some of these militia groups go there and when they encounter the poachers, they kill them. Go ahead, kill the animals, and then smuggle them to those countries where they get a lot of money. The Congolese authorities have been working with some international organizations to try and protect the rangers' lives and also the wild animals there. But, the attacks have continued to happen. This in April last year, there were 12 rangers who were killed in that very attack, in that very park by militia groups who were unidentified, although the locals in that area said this latest attack was carried out by a group known as the Mai Mai. This is a vigilante group that claims to be protecting the land of the ancestors and the mineral resources from rebels from neighboring Rwanda, Uganda, and Burundi. Now the Congolese authorities saying they have sent troops to deploy, they have sent troops to pursue these rebels in order to bring them to justice.
All right, Chris Ochamringa for us there in Kinshasa. The Ethiopian National Defense Forces have announced that they have apprehended Sabihat Niga, one of the main founders of the Tigray People's Liberation Front and a chief strategist of the rebel group. The military also says 8 other former top officials of the TPLF, including the former regional council speaker as well as the regional bureau heads, have also been arrested in central Tigray. Here's CGTN's Girum Chala with more.
The top TPLF leadership, including its founder Sabihat Niga, seen here handcuffed, were apprehended in central Tigray's rugged terrain. Also seen here are 8 other former top office holders arrested, such as the ex-regional council speaker, former Ethiopian ambassador to Sudan, and bureau heads of the regional state.
As per the orders given to us, we have been executing the job of hunting down these criminals 24/7. As per the information we got from people here, we have finally managed to arrest them. The place where we have found them is difficult for people to survive.
This is seen as a major milestone in the efforts of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government to wrap up what it has called a law and order enforcement mission in the region. It's also an important step in plans to bring the TPLF leadership accused of orchestrating the deadly attack on the National Defense Force Northern Command base to justice. The army has said that the hunt targeting the former president of the regional administration, Debretsion Gebremichael, continues.
The people of Tigray have no more allegiance with this people. People are tired of the TPLF leadership and do not want to cooperate with them. Besides that, people around here have been pretty much cooperative with us by delivering valuable information to our members daily.
On the other hand, Tigray remains by and large peaceful, and people are leading their daily lives normally in different parts of the region. Many, including organizations like the UN, are vocal about the humanitarian situation in the northern territory of Ethiopia. They say there are places that are inaccessible due to ongoing conflicts in some pockets. The government is of a different opinion, however. It maintains that the delivery of relief services, repatriation work and rehabilitation programs are all going on smoothly. Grumchara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Beijing has hit back once again at Western media's repeated allegations of forced labor in Xinjiang. China's foreign ministry held a news conference on Monday and refuted claims that citizens in the region are denied the freedom to choose where to work. Wang Mengqie has more.
The foreign ministries hosted local officials and residents of Xinjiang, which is home to 13 ethnic minority groups. Authorities said all residents are protected by China's labor laws.
In reality, laborers of all ethnicities in Xinjiang choose their jobs out of their free will. They sign labor contracts with and receive payment from companies on the basis of equality and their willingness to work, according to the labor law of People's Republic of China and relevant regulations. They enjoy full freedom in deciding where to work.
We can earn more money in inland cities, which provide more experiences for personal development. Who wouldn't go? If I was forced into labor, why would I introduce my family members to work in my previous company?
When Western media talk about alleged forced labor in Xinjiang, there is another buzzword they use, re-education camps, which they describe as a living hell. But the reality on the ground is otherwise.
There have been no so-called re-education camps in Xinjiang. The vocational education and training centers legally established in Xinjiang are schools aimed at de-radicalization. These are no different in essence from the community corrections enforced in the US, the desistance and disengagement program in the UK, and the de-radicalization centers in France, which are all conducive efforts and proactive measures of preventive counterterrorism and de-radicalization.
The training center is a school for us. The classrooms are spacious and bright. We have a reading room and playground. Even the accommodation is free. We have class from Mondays to Fridays and take a rest on weekends.
From 2014 to 2019, Xinjiang has averaged an annual growth rate of 7.2%. GDP in the region rose from more than 900 billion yuan in 2014 to over 1.3 trillion yuan in 2019. Xinjiang has also been peaceful, with no cases of terrorism occurring in the past 4 years. Officials say Xinjiang now enjoys some economic growth, along with a constant improvement of people's livelihood and steady progress. Wang Mengjie, CGTN, Beijing.
Let's now turn our attention to matters business. Here's what's ahead. Nigeria maintains its lead as the biggest economy in Africa.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
Is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in. Business in Africa is high risk. After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Nigeria has maintained its lead as the biggest economy in Africa in terms of the size of the country's GDP. That's according to the International Monetary Fund in its recent World Economic Outlook report. Africa's leading economy slumped to a contraction in the third quarter of 2020, but is optimistic of a quick rebound this year. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam has more.
The IMF ranking is based on nominal GDPs of countries' estimates from financial institutions. They are calculated at market or government-approved exchange rates. Nigeria earned the #1 spot in Africa and 26th worldwide with its GDP of about $443 million. Though it puts the West African nation at a vantage position, experts say it's a subpar feat.
Investors across the globe will consider countries where they want to pool their monies. So when we talk about the strength of a country, they are not just going to consider the population. They also want to consider the size of the economy. The larger the size, it is expected that the economy will attract more investment for the country. Nigeria should attract investment in the coming period, and I think in 2020 we should have experienced that, but for COVID.
If we didn't perform well, we're supposed to be the 20th. And if we had done a quarter of the things that were embodied in the Vision 2020 document, I bet you we would have been between the 10th and 15th biggest economy in the world. For instance, we have very much improved our infrastructure. We have made ourselves very, very competitive trade-wise in terms of production of goods and services, that we will have positioned ourselves in a very good area to compete now that we have the African Free Trade Continental Area.
Nigeria's GDP contracted by -3.62% in the third quarter of 2020. The recession's been fueled by a raft of issues, including fall in oil prices, trade imbalance, and economic disruptions caused by COVID-19.
All we need to do right now is to reorder our priorities. The music has changed. So we can't continue dancing to the old step. One is that we are not making enough revenue. Two is that the little we have is not properly managed. Secondly, we need to block loopholes.
In the short term, government needs to support small businesses so that pressure that we have on prices will significantly reduce. Number two, what government should do as a matter of medium term is to partner with private sector. With public-private partnership, government can conserve revenue. But the third and the most important, which is the long term, which I think government should start to lay foundation for today, is contained on this of doing business, is also contained in National Economic Development Plan.
It's not yet a huru for Africa's largest economy. More than 40% of the country's population is still poor. The IMF advises Nigeria to implement transformative domestic reforms to promote resilience to economic shocks. That includes revenue mobilization, digitalization, and fostering transparency in governance. A move that could see Nigeria taking a leading position beyond nominal GDP. Kelechi Mekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Meanwhile, economists have further revised South Africa's already grim 2021 growth forecasts. It comes after the renewed lockdown rules imposed between Christmas and New Year to help contain a second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. Angelo Coppola has the details.
Some economists are suggesting that a first quarter contraction could be in the offing.
If you look at this year, because of the low base effects that we saw in 2020, expectations range from anywhere between 2% to about 5%. Our own forecast at Alexander Forbes is about 3.8% for the whole year of 2021. But even that forecast is really subject to risks.
One sector that understands risk is the mining sector. It remains a key pillar in the country's recovery, and operational planning is a critical aspect of its success.
I think from a cost perspective, in terms of the testing and all the additional protocols we've got to put in place, we've made provision in our budgets for this year. From a cost perspective, I think we've anticipated in December that this wave was coming, so we had recruited some additional key skills during the course of last year. We've extended their contracts, to try and fill key vacancies.
There are other risks like public healthcare management and corporate and human counterparty risk, but they're overshadowed by the massive economic risk.
Jobs will remain scarce. No companies are going to be hiring new individuals without knowing how far the economy is going to recover. Incomes are going to be impacted, and with incomes being impacted, it means household consumption will also remain quite muted as long as individuals don't feel safe to go out and spend.
While the government can't be questioned about the social support safety net for individuals, economists are questioning how much support the government has provided to the business sector, especially the country's economic engine room, small and medium enterprises.
Roughly between 16 billion to 20 billion of that 200 billion has been disbursed to a small medium enterprise, which means a large majority of those funds are still available, in part also reflecting the credit risk appetite of commercial banks, which are the implementing agents of this instrument.
Just as everyone is expecting the economy to get back on track again, at least to pre-2020 levels, this latest lockdown is going to mean that we're going to see some more contraction. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
The COVID-19 crisis has been a silver lining for Tunisia's inflation rate, which dropped in 2020. CGTN's Adnan Chauchi tells us that's largely due to a drop in imports. Take a look.
The National Institute of Statistics explained that stability is mainly due to the acceleration in the rate of food price increases by 4.4% against 4.3% in November 2020, as well as health products and services by 7.5% against 7.3% 1 year ago.
The latest figures show that since the beginning of 2020, inflation has been on the downward trend from 5.9% in January 2020 to 5.8% in February, followed by a transitory rebound to 6.3% during the months of health lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic, then a gradual ebb to 5.4% from August to October, and to 4.9% in November and December.
The Central Director of Economic Statistics added that core inflation, excluding food and energy, stabilized at 5.9% against 6.1% in October 2020 and 6.3% in September 2020.
Core inflation is stable. We exclude food and energy products because their prices are highly variable. 5.9% is an important indicator of stability. However, it stopped considerably compared to September 2020, when it was around 6.3%.
According to the latest statistics published by the Central Bank of Tunisia, the country's net foreign exchange reserves exceeded $8.6 billion on January 5th. It is equivalent to 161 days of import.
The inflation does not stabilize because of a production ramp-up, but rather due to imports decline. Due to the global coronavirus crisis, Tunisia reduced imports as well as exports, the price of oil is down, and Tunisians don't use foreign exchange as they don't travel. Consequently, foreign exchange reserves hit a new record. This translates into disinflation. However, inflation is still very high in Tunisia.
On annual average, inflation stood at 5.6% in 2020 against 6.7% in 2019 and 7.3% in 2018.
During the first wave of COVID-19, demand for pandemic-related goods as well as food products surged in Tunisia. The prices of some specific goods went up. The demand for medical products is still high, while panic buying for food has stopped in the North African country. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
A new type of clothing inspired by the ancient Japanese art of origami could help the fashion industry reduce waste and help parents save money buying children's clothes. The company Petit Pli seeks to introduce clothes designed to adjust to the shape of growing children in the hope of edging out a fast fashion. CGTN's Beryl Oro has that story.
London-based startup Petit Pli, which is French for little pleat, designs children's clothes with an innovative pleat system that lets them grow with the child, expanding in multiple directions but also able to contract back to their original size.
Petit Pli exists because the fashion industry is the world's second largest polluter, and we already know what one of the solutions is, and that is to extend the life and use of clothes, and that's the best way we can reach our carbon, water and waste emission targets by 2030.
According to Yasin, children grow 7 clothes sizes during their first 2 years, meaning parents are left with a lot of clothes that have barely been worn before they are too small for the child.
When I first showed my niece the garment that expands, she was around 3 years old, and so the garments in their condensed state looked too small. And then when I opened it for her, she just gasped with excitement, and I think that element of magic truly captured what innovation can be.
With a background as an aeronautical engineer specializing in deployable structures, Yasin's outfits embed a special structure in fabric that was inspired by the ancient Japanese art origami.
This involved a lot of research into origami structures and folds and stowing away as much material as possible into a small gap and then having that deploy out in space. And that has really filtered down into this design.
Petit Pli featured in 2017's Global Grand Show, which showcases students' ideas for social impact to solve the environmental, social and economic issues facing the world.
What if you could have a garment which has temperature properties which are far beyond what our standard cheap clothing can achieve? What if you could have one garment which really truly does keep you dry and cool in summer and also dry and warm in winter, where it's adapting? Or what if you could have a garment which morphs in its shape for different social situations?
One set of Petit Pli clothes currently fits a child for more than 3 years, growing through 7 distinct sizes before being reset back to the smallest size and passed on to the next infant or sibling. The company is now also experimenting with prints to hide daily stains and exploring adult wear and non-children's wear application. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Let's now take a look at your sports news. Here's what's ahead. Brad Binder's historic Grand Prix win last year inspires young South Africans to take up the sport.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find